Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Atlantis Rising, 2nd edition from Elf Creek Games. So the first thing you're going to notice is that Atlantis Rising is beautiful. Do note that this playmat is an extra. This does not come in the main box. It's just so nice I couldn't resist using it. But everything else depicted here is actually base components, including these really lovely resource tokens. There are upgraded ones you can buy that look even better, but I actually think that the base ones look great already. So how do we play it? Atlantis Rising is a cooperative worker placement game where we are the citizens of Atlantis, and Atlantis is sinking into the ocean. So what we need to do is go around our island, gather various resources or convert resources into other materials, and then use those resources to build 9 blueprints, and then finally our power core, which is going to allow us to escape the island once and for all. So throughout the game, you'll be deploying your workers to various spaces along the branches of this island or to the center in order to build blueprints. There are 9 blueprints in total that you'll be building per game, and each is going to have a varying level of difficulty and will require more or fewer resources. Each blueprint you build will also give you either a one-time or a permanent in-game bonus. Sometimes it's just getting to unflood a tile, but sometimes it's actually an extra bonus space where you can send a worker and achieve something very cool. These are the basic 9 blueprints that you'll put out for your first game, but there are actually different configurations of them that can make your game easier, harder, and introduce other special abilities to gameplay. So there's a lot of variability, even in the goals that you set for yourself within the game. As you build various blueprints, you're going to be placing them over here on their built side, where they will all eventually contribute to your activation of the power adapter at the end of the game. However, things are not actually going to be that easy. Remember how I told you that your island is sinking? Well, seriously, it is. And you're going to lose access to various spaces on the board as the turns go by. On each turn, you're going to start out by placing your various workers, your Atlanteans, out on the board in search of the resources that you need. You can go to the mountains to collect ore, to the cities to get additional workers, to the hills to get gold, to the forests to get crystals, to the library to get special artifacts and other helpful cards, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and here to the forges where you can convert the ore that you've collected into a special metal called Atlantium, which you'll need a lot of in order to escape your island. It's your special technology as inhabitants of Atlantis. But here's the twist. The further away from the center of the island you go, the more likely you are to collect a resource. So here in the hills, if you go all the way out to the end, you're going to roll a die and you only have to roll a 3 to get some of that sweet, sweet gold. As you come closer to the inside of the island, you're gonna have to roll a 5 or a 6 to get the same results. But the flooding of Atlantis is not gonna make things easy for you. Every round, after you've already placed your workers and kind of placed your bets, you're going to need to draw several misfortune cards that will cause parts of the island to sink. There's special cards in here as well, but some are just going to be areas of the map that are going to sink. So for example, if you draw forests, that means that you're going to turn over the bottommost forest tile, and now it has sunk. Sometimes you'll get very lucky and nothing will happen at all. You'll have calm seas, but don't get too dependent on those, because as happy as you are when you draw one of these cards, you'll be equally disappointed when you pull a controlled flood, which causes you to flood 2 tiles in any sections. So you get to choose, but you lose 2 tiles, and there really aren't that many tiles to lose. So as you play, you're in a race against time. As more and more tiles sink, you're gonna have a lot less space to deal with. So your options are gonna dwindle. And also, as the island sinks, that's your clock ticking down. You win the game if you manage to activate the power core before everything flips, including this middle tile. However, if your whole island goes under before you can complete your task, you have lost the game as well as your home. The other bad news of misfortune cards is that if you pull one, and if it sinks a tile where you've already placed a worker, that worker does not get to perform their action. They get nothing this turn. So placing someone out at the very edge of your island is great in terms of having high odds of getting the die roll you need, but it's very risky because it's possible that tile could flood during the misfortune phase and you lose your action. Once you've survived your misfortunes, hopefully anyway, your workers will get to take their actions as described in their spaces on the board. At that point, you're going to roll a die and hope that you hit that die number in order to collect the resource that you need. That means that when you're going for ore, gold, or crystal, there is some luck involved. However, throughout the game, there are also ways to pick up what is called mystic energy, which is going to allow you to add to a bad die roll. So if you need a 4, but you roll a 3, you can pay 1 mystic energy in order to make that die roll into a 4 and get that crucial resource. You'll also need some luck in the cities, particularly early in the game. Here you're rolling dice to try to hit a certain total in order to get more workers. Getting more workers early in the game is a great idea. However, this is the one part of the board where it's actually harder to get things early because your die roll in this area of town is modified by what is called the Wrath of the Gods. After you take all of your actions, you'll have a Wrath of the Gods turn. And basically the gods are upset with you for thinking that you, mere humans, are able to get yourself out of the situation on Atlantis. So they want to sink the island faster to prove to you that maybe you should have appreciated them a little bit more. So at first the gods aren't particularly mad at you. Their wrath is just going to start here at 0. However, this value goes up at the end of each round. And what they mean is that you're going to have to sink this number more tiles on your island at the end of the round, in addition to what you already sank when you drew misfortune cards. So basically the game just gets harder and harder from round to round, and you better think quick. However, as the Wrath of the Gods goes up, your odds of getting extra workers also increase because the Wrath of the Gods value is added to your die roll when you're rolling for extra workers. However, if you're at the point where the Wrath of the Gods is already 3, you're already in pretty bad trouble, so it's really best to try to get workers early. But if all that die rolling and all the potential for bad luck worries you, fear not, you can come here to the library, where you're going to draw library cards that help you out. In addition to standard library cards that might give you a one-time special power, you also shuffle in a random assortment of artifacts that give you persistent and sometimes very useful abilities. Each player is also going to have a special power that can really help everyone else in the game. The Artificer lets you use components that you haven't built yet. The Champion, and all these have both male and female art, by the way, will allow you to take an action even if the tile that you're standing on floods. So normally if you've placed a worker too far out and the tile floods, you're out of luck and your worker will return back to your play area without completing any action at all. But if you have someone like the Champion at your side, then they can at least give you a chance at the resource that you needed. Meanwhile, the Explorer offers very helpful modifications to your die rolls in a game where you really need to roll well. For each counselor you play, you're going to have one leader pawn. This is the one that can actually exercise the special power that's on the counselor board that you chose. And you're also just going to have an assortment of normal workers who hopefully will increase in number throughout the game. Atlantis Rising also has interesting options for a solo player, in that it's both a cooperative game and a game that offers a solo-specific mode. So really as a solo player, you could choose to play either solo or multi-handed. In a pure solo game, you're going to start with more workers. You're also going to get help from a special worker called the Automaton. It can't do anything by itself, but it can be placed with other workers, and it gives a good bonus to their die roll. You'll also have a special worker called the Hologram, who does in fact look like a hologram. This is a really neat little piece. And basically each turn, the hologram is going to take on one of the different roles of the counselors that are available in the game. So we talked about our counselors who have special powers over here. The hologram is going to have a different one that rotates throughout the game, and it will be there to help you out. If you decide that you want to solo the game but two-handed with 2 counselors, you don't use the Automaton, but you do still get to use the hologram, and that's also pretty cool. The other option is to just play by yourself with 3 or 4 different counselors and their pieces. If you play with 3, you get more workers to start with, and then if you play 4, then you use the standard setup that is at the very front of the rulebook, and just go ahead and control 4 characters. So now for some final thoughts. I really enjoyed Atlantis Rising, and I think it's a very fun co-op that can be played solo. There are plenty of things to say about it, but I do want to start with how beautiful the production values are. I do have the upgraded pieces, but even the non-upgraded pieces that I showed in this video are beautiful. A lot of thought went into the look of this game, the feel of the components, the organization and layout of the rulebook. It's just a stellar production. Enough that it's actually worth noting in a review, which is something that I don't do that often. And then there's the gameplay itself. I got a lot of satisfaction out of learning how to manipulate my dice, to mitigate bad luck, to use special powers, and to use the cool things that I'd built around the power core. All of the cool stuff that you can find in the library also adds a lot of spice, flavor, and new opportunities for strategies to the game. So far, those things have come together to make every game a little bit different, and to give me new and interesting ways to solve the problem of saving Atlantis every time the game hits the table. This is one that I enjoy playing by myself, and when we are all allowed to go outside again, I cannot wait to play this with my friends in my game group, because I think we're going to have a really good time. And all of those fun tools, strategies, and powers lead to what really makes this game great, which is that every single time you play it, it is a really fun story that you play out. Even when you lose, it's very dramatic, and you end up being very involved in and engaged in what's happening on the board, because you're just so into what's happening. And any game that can create that feeling is a good game in my book. That said, Atlantis Rising is not a perfect game. I think the most upsetting aspect of gameplay is that depending on how your die rolls go, whole actions can be lost. You can miss out on getting resources that you need, and that can have a chain reaction on other actions that you need to take around the board. I understand why the game is built that way, but that doesn't change the kind of negative feelings that come up when I completely whiff on my die rolls and have a horrible turn. Overall, I really enjoy playing Atlantis Rising, and I accept this as part of the gameplay, but there are times when things go so badly that it sours my experience a little bit. This is especially true if I also draw really horrible misfortune cards. The other thing I want to note, and this isn't necessarily bad, is I think the solo mode specifically for one player is actually not as good as playing the game 2 or 3-handed, preferably 2 for me. The hologram that you play with that can mimic the powers of other Atlantean leaders is super cool, and I love that it makes an appearance in the 2-player game. But for me, in the 1-player game, the automaton that helps mitigate your die rolls just doesn't excite me as much as actually having a separate set of workers and doing the negotiation over resources that you would do in a co-op game. I feel like several aspects of the game open up more if you're actually playing as multiple leaders instead of trying to do it all by yourself with a couple of helpers. I'm glad that they thought out the solo mode, and I'm glad that it's there, but really 2-handed is the way that I would prefer to play this one. That said, Atlantis Rising is a beautiful game. It's a game that's fun to play, and every time I get it out, I'm excited about what's going to happen. And for that, I give it a 9 out of 10 and a Dice Tower seal of excellence. Happy gaming.